Yeah, good morning. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so before understanding today's concepts, quickly recollect it what we were understanding yesterday. And then we go ahead to today's object. Yeah, yesterday which we were trying to recollecting about that some important concepts of AWS. That's about files and folders, yes, which what are the main things that's required, and system information, how do you get it, and file permissions, how do you manage it, process management activities, package management, service management, networking commands, users management commands. Yeah, there are some important activities as a DevOps engineer which we should know from the Linux operating systems. Yeah, so that's we are trying to understand it, recollecting about it Linux side, and then, but if you'd like to perform any small activity, that is users related activity or some service restart activity or some package installation activity, if you'd like to perform it on a number of systems, yes, if you are working this in the infra is not going to have only one system or two systems, right? As a number of projects and each project number of environments and each environment a number of servers. So we should able to manage that. But those systems management, it is not one day activity, that is a continuous activity. So you have this, let's assume that some 50 systems for about your project, but all the 50 systems management activities are monitoring activities. So as we are understanding about it, that's yeah, the monitoring related activities, these are all things like a disk checking our memories or CPU verifications or the network IO operations or the disk IO operations. And then configuration management point of view, yes, that is user creation or deletion or password reset or service restarts or package installation or some networking configuration or some file permission changing. So these activities that comes under that configuration management related. But all these activities, how to manage it on the number of systems whichever about your project is. What do we do? That is, we take it to one centralized system. We don't log into each system. So we take it to one centralized system, and whatever the activity that is required, that activity related automation script which will implement it. So if it is a Linux based operating system, so shell, or if it is a Windows based operating system, PowerShell. But here we are not going to deal that Windows based systems, and we are giving the priority to that Linux based operating system. So that is with the shell scripting. Yeah, which activity is required? So identifying that's the activity, that activity related script implementation. And once the script is ready and tested and it is verified, then we take that the script, sorry, we take that the script and we apply to that all the number of target servers, whether we have that 1 or 100 or 1000, 10,000, that doesn't matter. But what are the things that's required? The prerequisite is from this central system, we need to have that communicating to the remote systems. That is, yes, like as we were understanding SH configurations before, password-based communication, passwordless communications. Passwordless is recommended in the automation world. Yeah, this is one-time activity, identifying the central system and all the destination or target systems and configuring that SH configuration. This is one-time activity. But if you do the one-time this configuration, and if you have this automation script, then within the minutes, instead of taking the hours of the time to applying the configuration changes, yes, within the minutes we can apply the configuration changes to the entire infra servers. Or if something is failed, yes, we can define in the automation script, sending the email notification to the stakeholders who would like to receive the notifications. Yeah, so this should be done with automation. But automation, whenever we talk it at a Linux level, shell scripting is the concept. But shell, if you are implementing that, or any scripting, I'm not talking about the programming, Any scripting you are talking about it, whether the shell scripting, whether the Python scripting or PowerShell, if you are going to use it, or you are going to use it, that's a YAML scripting approach or XML approach. Some standard terminologies which we should understand that those we are trying to look into that. Yes, first identify about your functionality which you need to implement it. The functionality. So we call it in the programming terminology, requirements terminology, we say the functionality, but programming terminology, we say that functionality as a function or operation. Yeah, so as a generic example, which are taken that calculator, okay, add operation. Or if you're talking about the Linux related operations, monitor the disk or monitor the CPU, they're all operations. Or create a user is operation, or delete a user is operation, or restart the service, Apache services, this is the operation. Yes, which operation that you want to perform it, that operation identify. But whenever we are going to implementing the operation, yes, inputs required. Inputs we say that's the variables which are defined in the program. Or if you are receiving that dynamically to this function, we say that arguments are parameters, we'll call it that. Or in some of the programming language, we say that attributes. Or properties also, we will call it that. So there are the different terminologies. What are the terminologies we are talking for that? Variables, arguments, attributes, properties. Or in the database terminology, if we just talk the columns. But all these are all having that name and value which has been assigned. So this one I can say one variable. Yeah, if you are receiving through the function, that's we say that arguments or the parameters. Or if you talk it in the OS level, environment variables. Yes, that's environment variable. That is also one variable which contain the value, the variable name and the value. Yeah, on the base of that, the programming level, are you going to talk it? Are you going to talk it? The database level, are you going to talk it? But these are all that, the same thing, which contain the name and the value. And sometimes we say that tags. Tag is also name and value, which contains some name and value has been assigned to that. Yeah, in the AWS, whenever we move it, we will use it the tags keyword, which contain the name and value. Yeah, on the base of the scope, maybe different terminology, but variables or the arguments or the parameters or attributes or properties or columns. So, or we say that in the some programs map which contain the name and value. Yeah, name is a variable name and a value. Yeah, so that's one thing very important understanding that inputs. So which will pass that the values to this function which are required, and then we'll have that logic which is required to perform it, and then finally output. Output, whether do you want to return this output to that other program, or do you want to print that output over here? So isn't that like a print commands or the echo commands, or do you want to redirect that output to the file? Already we are observing this in the some shell programmings. How do we redirect output of that command to the file? How do we redirect the command output to the file in the shell?
Greater than file name.
Yes, greater than file name. That is going to overriding. Or if you like to append it, double greater than. Yes. Yes, whether do you want to write to the terminal, whether do you want to return to that other program, that value, or whether do you want to write into the file. So on the base of that, the will handle that's outputs of that the function. So these are all the generic concepts. I mean, this is not, I'm not talking about it the only the shell. Yes, any programming learn you are doing that is nothing but as for the programming language, maybe the syntaxes and the keywords of the program, maybe that is different, but concepts are the universal concepts. Yeah, so we are trying to understand the functions and functions with the parameters and parameters taking and dynamically taking these parameters and assigning to the variables within the program, then performing the logic and then logic returning that output. And this function, whatever that output that is returning, we can catch and we can assign to that. Yes, you can invoke that function, and once the function has been executed, whatever that output it is returning, we can catch that to another variable. And this variable now you can use it for the print or other operations in this program. This one we say that invoking the function, invoking or calling the function. Yes, whenever we talk it that the function you are defining is nothing but first function has to be defined. Function has to be defined or implemented. Once function has been implemented, or you can invoke the function. How do you invoke the function? By using the function name, and if it is expecting any arguments, by passing that arguments. Yeah, some programs we need to pass the parameters in this format within the braces. We need to pass it, or some of the sometimes suppose shell if you're going to use it. So how do you pass that? The parameters is use the function parameter 1 and parameter 2. Like this, you can pass it that. Suppose in our shell script, if we just observe that shell commands cp command, cp is a function, and we are passing that the source file, that is one parameter, and destination file or destination directory, that is another parameter. There is parameter 1 and parameter 2. So this is the shell notation, and this is the programming notation. So invoking the function and passing the parameters to this function. So on the base of the which programming are you going to use it? So that programming model you need to talk at that. But concept is how do I pass the functions? I mean, how do I pass the parameters to the function? If it is the programming, this is the model, or if it is the shell, or if we just talk it some the YAML scripts whenever you are invoking or some commands you are going to run it. Yes, we need to pass the parameters to the function like this. Yeah, so these are basic concepts understanding and some important keywords, the understanding. Are you clear about these points? So very, very important. If you understand these keywords, then whatever we are going to talk it as the next, you can understand something. Otherwise, then there is no meaning at all about it. So is it clear? Shall I move to this next? Starting the shell scripting. Okay, good. Thank you. Oh, I lost the power. Sushma, Ravi, Ajay, Usha. Good. Everyone, thank you. Yeah, everyone, can you hear me? Is it audible to everyone? Actually, I lost the
Yes,
power.
sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. We are able to hear your voice.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, so good. So that's the concepts, the programming, the basic understanding that terminologies. So whenever I'm going to use the keywords variable or argument or parameter or assigning the value to the variable or yeah, return that outputs, or if I talk it about the function, define it first, or function after defining call the function or invoke the function with arguments. If I use it, all these terminologies, and you should follow the terminology, that is important. Then you can understand whatever I'm going to talk it in the programming. Okay, good. So let's start it. So the shell scripting. Yes, now we are good to start the shell. The prerequisites, that was understanding. So why do we need to go for the shell scripting? If you have this Linux activities to perform this on the number of the systems in the infrastructure, then we need to go for this automation approach. But how do we write it? Linux operations or Linux activities. So automation approaches is by using that the shell scripting. Yeah, before going to understand this, the shell scripting, first what is the shell? So try to understand this, what is the shell? Then we'll come back to the scripting. Yes, already we are using the shell so far. Last 3 weeks or the 4 weeks, whatever we are working with, that we are working with the shell only, right? Yes, shell is an environment in which we can run our commands. That's Linux commands, or the programs and the scripts also you can export it. This is the interface as we are talking about it. Initially, this is one of the important component from the operating system, where applications or the user can interact with that and we can run the commands. And backend, it is going to take the help of the kernel. The backend, it is going to take the help of the kernel, and that kernel is another component which is going to working at operating system level, interacting with the hardware devices. Yeah, that's about that. The shell, the where whatever we are running the commands, whatever we are learning the commands so far, yes, we have used the shell. But whenever we are using the shell, different types of the shells are available. But mainly we use it bash shell. Yes, the interviews point of view or infra point of view, at least which we should know that the bash shell, that is important. But we have the other flavors of the shells also. Is there having any disturbance? Because we lost the power and I'm running on hotspot.
No, it's clear.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, there are different flavors of the shells, just as there are different flavors of operating system. Is how we have this operating systems, like as Linux, which we have that RHL based or Debian based, like that. Shell is also have the different types of the shells. And each flavor of the shell has its own set of recognized commands and functions. But why we have this difference is, suppose if we just quickly go through that, we have the C programming language or C++ programming language or Java programming language or Python programming language. Why we have this all these programming languages? Suppose if I would like to implement one website, either I can go for the Python or I can go for the PHP or I can go for the Java or I can go for the .NET. Why we have this different programming language for the same activity?
Because every language is having its own pros and cons. Depends upon the application. We can have a choice of to choose what kind of programming to be implemented.
Yes.
Something like if it is OOPS concepts need to be implemented, we can go for a Java
Yeah.
or a .NET.
Good.
Reusability of code is happening over there.
Yes.
But in a
Exactly.
structured program, we need to go for C.
Yes. Main is ready-made frameworks which are available. Reusability. Yeah, that is the main concept. Yes, each programming language is have that its own pros and cons. and its own syntaxes approaches and its own the framework models or plugins models. Reusability. Main is reusability. See, one program has been implemented is nothing but that program, how do we reuse it? Yes, that is a very, very important concept. Yeah, as a like C++ approaches, which we have that OOPS concepts, which are having some standard approaches to define or implementing the program. Yeah, so that is okay. So the what are the pros and cons which we have this from each programming language and which one is recommended, that is not the concept here, but just try to understand it. Yes, the same activity to perform it, we have the different providers with different mechanisms or methodologies or reusability approaches they are using, and they have released that. Yeah, Python, yes. They have the supporting for the gaming application, data science application, machine learning applications. They have given the so many the ready-made modules for this kind of application to implement it. And Java, especially for that web application or enterprise applications or some threading models, yes, that is they have come up with that. Or .NET, if you go to that, yes, Windows-based operating system, and yes, that is C# or .NET, and they have their own products and their own the concepts. The same way, whenever we talked about the different shell, each shell is going to have its own syntaxes models, but objective is the same. Maybe little bit commands are the different, syntaxes are the different while defining that the command. So suppose C syntax is different and the Java program syntax is entirely different. Both are different concepts. Yeah, the same way to understand that the why we have the different shells, yes, objective is the same, but commands and command syntaxes and commands usage point of view, the little bit difference which we have that. But what are the different types of the shells are available is, if we try to understand that, yes, so there are mainly major types of the shells. So bourne shell, which we say that's which represents as yeah. So if you are using the bourne type of the shell, the default prompt is the dollar character, which you see that in the prompt section. And what is the binary file that is going to, whenever we use the bourne shell, what is the binary file that is going to have is in the root bin folder sh file. So this is the basic shell type, but nobody is using this bourne shell. But advanced to this bourne shell, we have the bourne again shell. Yeah, so these are all other shells. Yeah, the advanced to this bin bourne shell, bourne again shell is the recommended. So this one most frequently which we use it that. But we have other types of the shells like a K shell, C shell, T type of the shell, Z type of the shell. So normally we don't get the scope of this, leave it off it. But main shells, remember that, because whenever we are working with the Docker, some of the images, internally whenever we log into those images, it uses that bourne shell. But some of the containers are supporting that bourne again shell. Bourne again shell is the advanced one. Yeah, so the main these two types of the shells, remember that. But we have K type of the shell, that is bourne shell, or C type of the shell. That means you can write the shell scripting with the C syntax, C programming syntax. So that is a C type of the shell. Yeah, if you are using the C type of the shell, the default prompt is the percentage character. Yeah, so final overall that before going to implementing the shell scripting, what we should understand this is we have the types of the shell. Which type of the shell are you going to using that? So identifying the type of the shell, and you need to instruct it to the interpreter whenever you are running that the shell script. you need to instruct to about your interpreter which type of the shell are you going to using that. Yes, that is very, very important. Yes, but how do we define it within the shell script? We'll come back. But before that, yes, this is one concept which we should know. So whenever we are implementing the shell scripting can be defined, or syntaxes whenever we are implementing within the shell script is we can define which type of the syntax that has to be used. That's we say that type of the shell. Are you clear about these points?
Yes, sir.
Are you clear about these points? I mean, can you quickly, yes, Ajay, Usha. So types of the shells point of view, that we can understand that born shell, born again shell. Remember that these two types of the shells. But we have other types of the shells, K shell, C shell, or G shell. No, those are not required. The next coming to the shell scripting. Okay, shell we are talking about it, commands to define it, right? But what is the script? Why do we need the script? So we are able to run the commands and we are able to see the output of the commands. We are running the commands in the terminal, that is, so the shell is taking the command and it is executing and it is giving that output back in the terminal itself. But sometimes we need to run the commands with, yesterday we were talking about it, yes, we need to run the commands with the functional based or with the conditional based, with the iterational based. Then how do you manage it about that, those commands? Yeah, shell is helping to define the commands, but you need to define with the condition based statements, iteration based statements, functionality based function based statements, variables you need to define it. But how do you manage it? All the things is, yes, then that is shell script which will use it. Yeah, the basic concept of a shell script is executing a list of all the commands which are listed in the order. Yes, in the script, whatever that order you are going to define that, as per the order it is going to executing that. But whenever we are defining the commands, yes, there are the conditional based the statements defining, such as value A is greater than value B or not. We need to check it. So this is a condition based statement, or maybe you need to write it loops, allowing us to go through the massive amounts of the data. Suppose you need to print it 1 to 100 numbers. How you are going to print it 1 to 100 numbers? Print 1, print 2, print 3, print 4. Like that, are you going to print it? So we need to use it some looping mechanism. Print is the same command which is repeating that. How many number of times I need to print it? 100 times. Yeah, same block of the code. If you would like to require to execute it from one range to another range, then we need to go for that looping options. Yeah, allowing us to go through that massive amounts of the data. And sometimes yes, files reading, files data storing into the files, those kind of activities. And yes, variables reading and storing the data within the variables or files. And the functions implementation. Suppose one script which you need to write it, monitoring about the disk, monitoring about that the CPU, monitoring about the memory. All these functions you need to implement it. Then how do you do that? Yes, we take that the help of the shell script and we define the functions. One activity, one function. Yeah, whenever we have these kind of the requirements with the commands, then we go for that shell scripting defining. So all the shell script, what is the file extension that we'll be having is .sh extension. Yes, the shell script file extension is .sh. Yeah, so now we understand shell under scripting. Shell is a command, but whenever you are implementing the command, we have the different ways to define it. Different ways in the sense like different types of the shells are available. Are you going to use it base shell, or are you going to use it born again shell, or C type of the shell, K type of the shell? Which type of the model are you going to use it? That is a shell. But whenever you are defining the commands, yes, next option is scripting. Why do we need to go for the scripting? Okay, once you identify the shell, the sequence of the commands, whatever we are defining, maybe sometimes it is required with the conditional based, sometimes with the iteration based, and you need to implement functions, you need to define that the file operations and the file reading or file writing. So how do you handle these kind of operations with those commands of the shell that is the shell scripting. Are you clear about these points? Interest, but first understand this concept. Instead of directly starting the shell script and writing some 3 or 4 lines and executing that, okay, we can execute the script. But what you are doing that at the background, why I am doing that? So those points required to understand that. Yes, that's point of view. So we are talking all these points. Yeah, next another concept which we should understand before starting the shell scripting is shebang. So what is the shebang? Yeah, this is a very, very important concept, and in interviews they stress about it. What is the shebang in the shell scripting? Suppose now I would like to use it K type of the shell or C type of the shell. How do we instruct it to this my shell? Use it K type of the shell or C type of the shell or born again shell? That is through the shebang we will define it. Through the shebang we will define it. But how do you define that the shebang is and the shell scripting is? Yeah, before you add anything else to about your script, that means before adding any commands within the script, you need to alert the system that a shell script is being started. Yes, we are going to alert to that interpreter. Interpreter is which execute the program. So here, which interpreter we are going to use it? Shell interpreter. The shell commands to execute it. Yeah, alert the system that a shell script is being started. Yeah, so this is done using the shebang. But how do we define the shebang is? So this is the format which we use it in the shell script. Yes, first line of the shell script, the which we see that hash exclamatory, then type of the shell. So now which type of the shell this is? Bourne shell. Yes, if you like to use a Bourne shell, yes, /bin/h. Or if you like to use the C shell or jet shell or born again shell. So which type of the shell are you going to use it to execute the remaining commands? That's we are going to instruct it to the interpreter by using this shebang option. Yeah, if a script does not contain the shebang, the commands are executed using about your default shell. So default shell, but how do you know that what is the type of the shell that is defined is? That is echo dollar shell, you can use it. This is one variable which is defined at system level. Shell is a variable that contains the value. If the value is a bin bash, then that is going to use it by default the born again shell. If this shell variable contains the value as a /bin/sh, then that contains the born shell. Or you can use it echo $G. So let me go to this the virtual machine. Let me go to this mobile XTEM, and we have the systems, right? So which was started. Maybe the system is running it or not. Let me check it. 92.168.33.10. I'm just taking this Vagrant machine, or you can use it directly the Vagrant SH also. But already we had these tools using that. So I'm going to use it. Mobile XTEM to connect it to the system. Okay, good. So I have connected. Yeah, any system which you can use it. So which are so if you have this already know the AWS cloud, yes, you can take the EC2 instance or any one of the instance. Make sure about it. Yeah, so this is a Linux system, so which we are going to use it. Already we are using this one. I'm not using this new one. So the same one I'm continuing that. Now, how do you know that which shell by default it is defined is that is echo $0 if you run it. Echo is, as we know, that the print command, and $0 if you see this, that is showing that bash shell. That means if I run it any script without defining any shebang, then all those commands are going to executing with a bin bash. So that is going to use it bin bash. Or you can use that the variable that is a $shell. So this is also the variable which is supporting that system level, which type of the shell is enabled. Yeah, system level, what is the type of the shell? Suppose if I'm running that any commands, yes, which type of this shell, which type of the shell it is going to use it? That is a born again shell. Yeah, so system level. So I mean, the most recently there's everyone will use the born again shell. So there is no other option, but know that the concept. Suppose now we need to write it one shell script. So what is the file extension of the shell script which you are trying to understand is? That is dot. That is dot.
.sh.
Yeah, so dot sh file. Suppose I'm going to define the something hello dot sh. Yeah, file name you can give that any name. That extension must be dot sh. I'm just editing with vEditor. And as we are understanding that the first line of the script which starts with a shebang. Shebang, how to define that is hash with the exclamatory. Then you can define that which type of the shell are you going to use it. Do you want to use it sh or C type of the shell, K type of the shell? Other shells, I'm not going to talk at that, but main born again shell we are going to talk about that. That is bash shell. Yeah, the first line of the statement in the shell script which we define that the type of the shell, but that line what do we call that is shebang. Next one is, yes, what are the commands we have, the sequence of the commands we can define it. Suppose pwd or id command you would like to run it, or if you would like to run it something creating a directories or any commands we have, the sequence of the commands which we can define it. Suppose I would like to print it echo or print env. Let me just get it about it. List of all the environment variables. Yeah, so sequence of the commands, whatever we have, you can define that the sequence of the commands in a script. Yes, it is going to executing that order wise. Yes, first, second, command, third, like that it is going to use it. And suppose, how do I define that comments in a shell script?
Hash.
Yes, yeah, ash, good. Yeah, so as a best programmer, always, if you are writing that any programming, so what is the recommend approach is, before writing the business logic or the commands, first to describe about that activity. Describe about that activity. What you exactly are going to do that. But whatever I'm going to describe it, that line should not be executed by the interpreter. That means whenever I'm executing this script, the shell interpreter should not take it those lines. So those lines we call it as a comment lines. How do we define the comment line in the shell script is that is hash. And here you can write it. So the getting information info about PWD user info and environment variables. Yeah, so the before going to defining the commands, the first as a best programmer approaches is what you would like to do that first describe about it. So within the program itself, you can describe it, not required in the notepad. So, but how do you write it about your comments or about your, yeah, so like, description of the function which are writing the is by using the comment lines. How do we add the comment line in the shell is hash. But here also we have the hash. But this one we are saying the shebang. But this is one we are saying that only hash, the line which starts with the hash, that is a comment line. But here the line starts with the hash with the exclamatory, that is important. Hash with the exclamatory. Then interpreter is going to understand this the shebang line. That means it is going to understand, okay, these commands have been implemented using that, which type of the shell. So interpreter is going to understand this one, and using this file, these commands will be executed. And whenever you see this, this is the only hash. Okay, this is just a comment line, and it is going to take it and it is going to executing that. Okay, now let me save this file. And if I, yeah, once the shell script is available, now this is the script which I've created hello.sh. But if you would like to execute this script, what is the permission that is required is? What is the permission that is required? To execute the script, yes, executable permission is required.
Executable.
Yes, executable permission is required. But this file, is it having any executable permissions, or what are the permissions it is having? Current user can execute the script. Current user is the background who has created and background we have logged in, and that background user can execute the script. No, he cannot, as it is defined only read and write permissions. So first and foremost, before going to execute the script, to make sure that the script is having the executable permissions or not. A chmod and use it +X and the file name. Yeah, now if you verify this, that's a hello.sh. Yes, this is having that user level execute, group level, and others also. Or if you like to set up this only user level, use it u+X, only user level executable permission that is going to set up. Hello, can you hear me now?
Now it is audible.
Okay, fine. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that is required user level permission, group level permission, others level permission. You can use it chmod and you can set the permissions. Okay, now we are good. Hello.sh. But how do you execute the shell script? Yeah, once the shell script is available, how do you execute the shell script is? Yes, go to that location and you can use it // What is the dot representation is current directory. So in the current directory, the file whatever we have, that's hello.sh. Yes, we would like to executing that. Normally in the Windows directly you can give the file name, that is a PowerShell scripts or batch scripts. But on the Linux system, so use it dot slash to execute the script. Now I see the Siri has been executed the script and it is giving that the sequence of the commands whatever we have defined. Yes, first pwd command, current working directory, then id command. Yes, this is the id command. Then we are trying to print environment variables. Yes, they're all the environment variables that is available on the system level. Yeah, so shell is one variable which are observing that. Which type of the shell it is defined the value? Bin bash. Like the home directory. What is the previous working directory? Present working directory. And what is the path? Yes, they're all the environment variables. These are also variables, but system level variables. We are trying to print it. Is it clear about that? So that is what is the shebang option and how do we define the comments? Now this line is not executed. If you see that in this output, we don't see that line has been executed, right? Only first pwd command has been executed. There is a pwd and next id has been executed. Next print env has been executed. Are you clear about that? Understanding the shebang option? Shebang, how do we define it? And how do we define the comments? And shell is going to executing the sequence of the commands on the basis of the order which you have defined. That is one more important point. And shell script, if you would like to execute it, the file extension must be .sh and it should have the executable permission to the current user or a group level, the executable permissions. Are you clear about these points? Yeah, please confirm that, or otherwise if you have any queries, questions, please let me know that before moving to this next some examples with other types of the shells.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ravi Shankar, Ajay, Usha, good. What about others, please, quickly? So one of the important interview question is, what is a shebang in Linux shell scripting? So that is used to define the type of the shell. But which type of the shell are you using that? There is a born again shell. The bash shell, suppose bash shell is not going to support all the features in the command prompt. Suppose here if you go back to the, now we are using the born again shell. I use it up arrow, down arrow, and as well as tab option to autofill that. So all these features are available in the born again shell. That's why we say that born again shell is the advanced one. But suppose if you are going to use it the base shell, tab if you use it, it doesn't work it sometimes. As down arrows or like up command or down the previous commands, whatever you have executed, if you would like to see this like this, it doesn't work it. So all the supports in the normal shell doesn't give that. Some features, some less features, but born again shell is providing all these features. That is a difference. Slightly some points on this, understanding that why we have these different types of the shells. They are keep on improving the features and providing the features. Yeah, I have some examples. Let me show that the where you can use it and where you can try to work with that. So I will share it this link, which you can try with that. Yeah, DevOps resources in the GitLab, and you can go to that the shell scripts. Yeah, now we are talking about the types of the shells and the shell variables. Yeah, so here, yes, if you just try to understand it, some example. Yes, any script which starts with the shebang. So what is the type of the shell are you going to use it? And you can write it in the comments about author information, about the script information, what exactly you are going to do that with the script. Yes, you can define, and even you can define with the date and time on which date you are implementing. So all those points are the important. And here, yes, it has been defined some commands, so the sequence of the commands. And once the script is ready, yes. So the change that the executable permissions on the script, then you can execute the script by using // or we can use it in another approach also, sh under script name. Suppose if I go to the mobile extent, and we can use it in this notation also, sh under script name. This is also the same. Another approach which we're talking that is // and the script name. This is one approach, or you can use it sh on the script name. There are the two ways that we can do that whenever we are executing a script. Yeah, as we are understanding the shell types. Yeah, how do we, what are the different types of the shells are available is, as you can see that like a bin C type of the shell, or K type of the shell, or G type of the shell, or Python itself, we can use it within the scripting. But so we are not going to talk at all the types. So if you would like to practice it, let's take this block of the code and create a shell script and try to run it. C type of the shell, K type of the shell. But some of the type of the shells by default that is not installed in your system. Then you need to install the packages. Suppose, let me take it that this C type of the shell, defining this in the script. So I'm going to create one more file that is C shell.sh. And shebang, I'm going to use it bin csh. This script uses the csh as the interpreter. Okay, fine, good. Now if I save this, and let me set the permissions to this. And if I try to execute this C type of the shell, what it is saying this, you see? bin csh bad interpreter, no such file or directory. That means this type of the shell is not available. It is not installed on the system. C type of the shell is not installed, but you are trying to use it in the script. So it is saying this, no such file or directory. So you need to install this type of the shell. Suppose I don't know that what is the package name for this. Then what do we need to do? We need to go to the Google. Yes, let's go to the browser and csh, right? csh shell package name on RHEL based. Yeah, download and install CSH or TCSH shell on Linux. So we know that yum install the command to manage the package. But what is the package name? Yeah, what is the package name? That is TCSH. This is for that CentOS or RHEL based. Or if it's the Debian or Ubuntu based, as we are understanding, apt-get you can install it, and this is a CSH which is available. Or set CHS as the default login shell, then you can use it, yes, the CSH as that to the environment variable as a default shell. So if you'd like to install that type of the shell, then what we need to do that is we need to go for installing that package. Which package? TCSH. By default, this package is not available. But if you need it, yes, you can add that interpreter, the type of the shell, and we can use it, that script. That is T type of the shell script. Is it clear about that? Understanding the types of the shells, but mostly yes, which we use the born again shell, don't worry about it. But yes, some maybe in some of that like infras, whenever you join to the project, maybe they are going to use it like a different shells. Then don't get surprised about it. What about this different shell? Yes, as per that, the type of the shell, you need to refer to the documentation of the shell, and you need to go ahead and working on that, the type of the shell. But commands almost the same, but little bit syntaxes on the commands point of view, a difference. Yeah, so network bandwidth issue is taking the time. Are you following the points, everyone? You have the confusion with these concepts? Yes, go ahead, and once the video is available, then review one more time. That would be helpful, 1 or 2 times. Which is taking the time. Yeah, so refer these scripts, which I will share it once this class is over, and take it that each script and try to, but instead of copying and pasting in the class wise as a like explanation point of view, maybe I use that copy and paste. But whenever you are practicing that, don't try to copy it, paste it, and try to type it and use that. Then you will be having sometimes syntax issues. Yes, try to understand those syntax issues and resolve the syntax issues and work with the scripts. That is recommended. Yeah, suppose if you just observe that there is one more type of that the scripting approach. Can I use that shell script to execute the Python program? Now the point is, can I use the shell script to execute the Python program? Yes.
We
Same
can.
as the
We
C
can.
shell
We can.
based.
Yeah, with this shebang option, now identify about your Python interpreter where it is located. If the Python is installed on the system, and if the Python, the binary file is available, yes, just to specify that location in the shebang. Then you can use it that Python related syntaxes and a Python related programming approach in the shell scripting. Yeah, that is, I will show this one. So let me just check it that it has been installed. Yeah, so now that that type of the shell has been installed, now if I try to run this script, yes, we are able to execute the script. Yeah, by default, the C type of the shell is not available. Yeah, on the base of those requirement about the client which shell is required, yes, use the shebang and define it and make sure that the type of the shell interpreter is available on the system or not. Yeah, if it says that the bad interpreter and no such file or command are not found, then that type of the shell is not available. Now suppose Python, is it available or not? If I just check it about it, which Python, yeah, user bin, the which, no Python in anywhere. I mean, so there's no Python has been installed. So no Python in this anywhere in that path variable. It is not able to find the location. Or maybe Python 3, is it available? Python, we have the two version, Python 2 and Python 3. Yes, now I have the Python 3 on this machine, but not Python default version, there's a Python 2. So now I can take this, the interpreter, this is a Python interpreter, and I can use it in the shebang option in the shell scripting. I can run the Python commands within the shell script. Let me define that. So that is, this is, let me define the name as Python .sh. I'm just defining that extension is .sh. That means shell script. So I'm creating the shell script. But what is that interpreter I'm going to use? It is the interpreter is user bin Python 3. This is available. And I would like to use it, some print command here. The print of this, like, yes, welcome to the Python in the shell. So within the shell script, we are, print is not the command from the shell script. Shell is having that echo is the command, right? To print it, echo. But Python is having the print command. Even that in the Python 3, you cannot use it like even the print command like this. So you need to use it this notation. Suppose print space, if you use it, that is a Python 2 syntax. They're all like Python related concepts, but just print command. So whatever we are using, suppose echo command, whatever we are using in the shell scripting, there is a print option to the print to the terminal. In the Python, how I can print it, the message to the terminal, by using the print function. Yeah, now if I save this file and if I run this shell script, but this is not having the executable permissions. First, let me set up that executable permissions. Now, if I run this Python shell script, yes, now it is trying to work with the print command. Suppose if I change this script with the shebang option to the bin bash, and if I run this script, it is syntax error, because born again shell doesn't know about the print function. Syntax error near unexpected token. But here, if I would like to print it within this script as this shebang option, what do we need to do? If I'd like to print this message, what I need to do this?
Echo.
Yes, we need to change this one to the echo. Welcome to the shell. I would like to print this message. Now if I save this file and if I run this script, yes, because the interpreter now it has been changed as a bin bash. As a bin bash point of view, echo command it knows it, but print it doesn't know that. Print knows only by the Python. So whenever I define that interpreter as a Python, yes, I'm able to use the print function. But whenever I change it that the Python interpreter to the bash interpreter, Bash interpreter does not recognize the printf function. Is it clear about that understanding the shebang options? Yeah, good response. Ajay, Sushma, Ravi, Usha. What about others? Just sitting and relaxing? Maybe watching TV or some other activities. Yeah, be active in the chat window. That would be helpful for me and as well as for you to have some attention on the concepts. So good. So that's about the first and foremost concept which we should understand from the scripting, the shell scripting. Yes, you need to insert it to the shell. So which interpreter are you going to use in that? So yes, within the shell script, we can use it the Python interpreter and we can implement the Python coding. But a G shell, K shell, C shell. So this C shell is a C programming language structure. It supports about it like maybe if you remember about it, printf, scanf, C modules. With that, you can implement the shell script. But recommended for us, this is the one. Born again shell. Good. So that is about first. Next, let's write one shell that variables. Already yesterday we are trying to understand it. The variables are the first and the foremost important thing for the scripting. Any program you are implementing is nothing but inputs are the important. Okay, for the timing we are not doing the functionality implementation, but even the sequence of the commands if you are writing, that's also. Yeah, now we are just defining the sequence of the commands, right? But how do we declare or define the variables? And how do we read the variable values? So let's move into that, the variable concepts in the shell script. How do I define the variables? Defining or declaring, function definition or variable definition is important before going to use a variable or before going to use a function. Let me create one shell script that is variables .sh, or you can use the same script, that's about your choice. So the bin bash shell, we are going to use it. Or if you don't define also, what is going to happen that system level anyway bash shell which has been defined, it is going to use it, the bash shell anyway. So okay, let me try to delete this line. So I don't need that. Directly I would like to use that, the variables. Yeah, variable, how to define? Variable name, that is about our logical name. How do you want to identify that? The logic, the particular activities, that's we define the variable names. Suppose as a next, the example point of view, I would like to use it the one variable, the my shell. So normal standards, what do we follow? This is, I'll come back to that. The variables standards, how do we use it? I'll come back to that. So let me define that my shell as something, the bash shell. Okay, this section, what do we call this is variable. We have declared variable my shell. My shell or your shell or whatever the your name you are giving, that is about your choice. Any name you can give that, but that name, that should be some logical name, the where you can easily understand it. Okay, which purpose you have defined that variable. And value, okay, I have assigned that the value as a bash. But once the variable has been defined, this is the definition. Okay, we have defined the variable name and value. But how do I read the variable value? How do I use it, that value? Suppose I would like to print that variable value. I would like to print bash here. But I don't want to print directly the bash. So whatever the value that contains, whatever the value that contains in the my shell variable, I would like to print it that. Then what we can do this is, how do we read the variable value is dollar, and you can use it that the variable dollar. The shell script, how do we read the value of the variable is, that is a dollar, and variable name if we define that. Suppose let me add it here. Type of shell is, I'm going to print that variable value. If I save this file and if I run this file, yeah, the type of the shell is bash. So it is replacing this during the runtime, the value of the variable that is trying to printing here. Type of the shell is bash, it is saying that. Now if I edit this file once again, and if I change that, the type of the shell is only born shell instead of the born again shell. If I save it that variable value, and if I rerun the script, yes, the value is changing that. Okay, this is within the script. How do we define the variable and how do we assign the value to the variable? So this is the definition of the variable. This is the definition of the variable, and how do we read that variable? Once this variable has been defined, how do we read it? How do we read the variable in the shell? By using the dollar. Suppose the point is here, it is if we just try to understand some problems with the whenever we are defining the variables. Suppose if I use the space here, I would like to use it like this. Is it going to support by the shell? It is saying that command not found. I didn't do anything. So just what I have done is, I just added the spaces here. Here one space, here one space. So what the shell interpreter is understanding is, okay, you are trying to execute this command by passing this parameter 1 and parameter 2. That's why it is saying that my shell command not found. It is not considering as a variable. It is considering as a command. If you have the space between that equals and this command. So we should not use that any spaces whenever we are declaring the variables. So this is a syntax issue. Is it clear now? So the shell, whenever you are defining the variable name equals variable value. That is the definition of the variable, or assigning the value to the variable. Next point, what we are trying to understand is, how do we read the variable value? How do we read the variable in a shell script?
Dollar we can use.
Yes, dollar. Next, some more points. Let me talk it on the variable side. Suppose if I use it, the variable which starts with something numeric number, is it going to supporting that variable? Sorry. Yeah, the variable which starts with some numeric number. So the shell is it going to support that kind of the variable? So it is in this command not. What is that? I didn't do any changes. Just I added that the numeric number to my variable name. One my shell. That is I defined, but it is in the command not. That means a variable should not start with the numeric characters. There are the standards that we have that whenever you are defining the variables in a shell script. Let me quickly give that in the PPT. So what are the different approaches that we need to follow that whenever we are defining the variables? Yeah, shell comments we are understanding and using the shell variables. Yes, this is the concept now. Yeah, a variable is a string to which we assign a value. Yes, we are assigning a value to the variable which contains a string representation. So what is the advantage of these variables is during the program execution, it is going to store all these variables in a memory, temporary memory. Yeah, programming inner concepts, if you go through that variable, you can ask the sir, why do we define the variables in that program, and why do we need to read it once again? Instead of doing all these things, directly I will take this value and I will try to print it here. Why do we again I need to take the variable and why do I need to read the variable? Yes, why do we need that variable? Yes, so that is correct. Instead of saying that
We can
sh
call
here,
it for n.
sorry.
If we define, we can call it n number of times.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so here, yes, you can directly define that sh here, no issues. But today sh, but tomorrow bash, maybe after that csh. But suppose if this sh is required in that like 4 places, I need to define it. That means 4 places you need to change that sh to that bash or csh or something, right? If you're not using this variable and if you're directly using this value within this the logic, if it is required one time, okay, fine. But if it is required the number of times, the same value, and tomorrow, okay, today this value and tomorrow another value. So you need to pass it some dynamic content, not static. If it is a static, okay, you can define it one time, which is not going to changing that. If you have that kind of, then do that. But if you have those dynamic values, maybe now one value or maybe next execution another value, next execution another value, you need to pass it. Or suppose instead of saying this my shell, okay, the shell also my shell, sh shell or c shell, or we have the different values to pass it for this variable. There is a possibility. Or environment variable you are defining that. Environment variable, dev environment variable, dev or staging or SIT or UAT or the production. The values can be changed at any time. So if you have this kind of the requirement, dynamically changing the values of the variables, then define the variable and assign the value and use that variable within the programming logic. Then in the future, whenever it is required to change that, the value of this variable, you don't need to change it in the entire the script, you can just change it in the variable level. And this variable is going to, during the execution time, this variable is going to loading into the memory with this value, and wherever you are calling that value will be replaced. That is a fast execution. Yeah, all these advantages point of view are recommended to go for that of the variables. They're all the storage location that have a name. The value assigned could be a number or a text or file name or device or any type of the data. It's just we have used double quotation with a sh. That is a string. A text which we can say that, or we can define the number, or we can define the file name or device name, any other type of the data. So shell beauty, what we have is here you don't need to define that explicit data types. Even the Python also. But Java, if you are going to use it, or other program, .NET, you have the data types. Yeah, that is different concept, leave it off it. Yeah, so variables are the case sensitive. Yes, if I define the my shell with the small letters and my shell with the caps letters, that means I have defined the two variables. They're all the case sensitive. By convention, variables are the uppercase. Yes, whenever you are defining the variables, as a standard the format point of view, we use the uppercase letters. Yeah, syntax of this variable name equals to that the value. Yes, within that double quotation, if we define that the value is in them, that is a text format. Or if I don't use it any double quotation, or if I say that's 10 or something 100, then that is going to assume that that is a number. Or within the double quotation, you can give the file or a device name. So any data type you can use it, that variables. Yeah, some valid variables names, if you just observe that, yes, name equals, yes, some value for it. The shell enables you to store any value you want in a variable. Yeah, the shell, any type of the value you can store it in a variable. Yeah, variable 1, variable 2, 100, or this is the text and this is the numeric. But variable names, whenever we are defining that, the name of a variable can contain only letters, that is small letters or the caps letters, alphabets, and the number 0 to 9, or the underscore character. Yeah, variable names, whenever you are defining it, should contain either alphabets or the numerics or underscore. Yeah, the following examples are the valid variable names. Something underscore, yes, Ali, or token underscore A, or variable underscore 1. Yes, it contains underscore and a numeric. And here this variable is valid or not. Underscore has been started. Yes, you can start the variable. The first letter that could be either underscore or alphabet, but it should not contain the number. Number can contain in the variable, no issues, but it should not be in the first position. That's why we are having that error. A variable underscore 2, like that you can define. But following are the examples of invalid variable names. Yes, this is invalid. Why it is invalid?
Started with number.
It is numeric.
Yes, it has been started with a number. Yeah, variable can start with that either underscore or alphabet in the shell script, but it should not start with a number. That's why it is invalid. Is it valid or invalid?
Invalid one. Hyphen variable.
Yeah, invalid variable. Yes, why it is invalid?
Variable is keyword, I think.
Yeah, variable has been started with hyphen. This is not the underscore. This
Yeah,
is
yeah, hyphen. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, hyphen. Special character should not be used in the variables. Like hyphen, asterisk, cache, at the rate of, these kind of the characters we should not use it that whenever we are defining the variables. Yes, this is also invalid. Yes, hyphen is there. And this is also invalid because exclamatories are there. Yeah, we should not have that, the special characters. And we are understanding how do we access those variables also, right? So how do we access the variables? How do we access the variables? Once a variable is defined, dollar notation. Yeah, to access the value stored in a variable, prefix its name with the dollar, that is dollar. Example, yes, name you have defined. And if you'd like to read this name, dollar name. Even environment variables also we are reading with the dollar shell, dollar pwd. Dollar is to read the variable value which is stored in the memory. Now let me ask you some questions and use the chat window quickly to type the answers. Yeah, my shell equal to bash. Is it a valid one or not? And valid, yes, that is valid, fine. Okay. So what is that output that is going to have?
I like back shell.
I like the bash shell. Okay. So next here, is it a valid variable or not? And if it is a valid variable, what is that output that will be have?
Invalid, like why? Because the special character will not be used in the
So what is that output that will be having here? So normally we are talking about it, variable to read it. Once variable has been defined, variable to read it, we use the dollar. But here it has been used a dollar and within the curly braces. Is it a valid statement or invalid statement?
I think invalid. The special character will not be used in the variable. Like
That is wrong.
Use, sir, that is the optional parameter. Option.
That is optional parameter. Maybe, but that is
basically
not.
syntax error. Basically syntax error will get, but that is the special character, right? Whatever we mentioned in the read character.
You are talking
We are
about this
not
one.
defining variable with parentheses, means brackets. We are just calling that. We are accessing the variable.
Okay, yes, we are accessing the variable. So what is that output that we are going to have?
The same output, sir. Same output. I think
Output.
I like the bash shell only.
bash
Same like that.
Okay. Are
No,
you sure?
we'll have the word bash in the flower braces.
Okay, so we are going to have the bash in a curly braces. Okay, that is also invalid. Yeah, so here the point, let me just conclude it here. Whenever we are reading the variable of the shell scripting, one format which we can use the dollar, another format which we can use it a dollar within the double curly braces. This is also valid. So finally, what is that the output? I like the bash shell.
So in the output, there will be no curly braces directly.
Yeah,
We can use. We can use.
In output, there is no curly braces. So let me show this by executing the command. Yeah, and just define this. So what is the dollar double curly brace? Is also dollar representation. So I like the bash shell. There is no exception, there is no error, nothing. And there are no curly braces printing. So what is the meaning of this dollar? I mean, you see this here, I didn't define that the dollar after the curly braces. If I have defined this dollar after the curly braces, maybe that is, yeah, so it is going to have the printing of curly braces. But shell has given one more notation to read the variable is dollar within the curly braces. Why they have given the two formats? Either one point, what we can use it? Dollar with a variable name. This is one notation. And another notation, what we can use it? Dollar within the curly braces. You can define the variable name which you would like to read it. These two notations are the same result. There is no issue. Vishal has given the two approaches. But why they have given the two approaches is, now let me talk at another example. Now what it is going to print here? Can you analyze this?
I am bashing on my keyboard.
I am
Bashing.
bashing on my keyboard. Yes, that is correct. Yes. Yeah, please. So here, suppose if I take this example and if I do this, suppose if I use it instead of double curly braces, I need to have it. I am bashing on my keyboard. That is output required for me. I am bashing on my keyboard. Now, what is the value that is going to have it now?
It is
Error.
invalid, sir, because
The
dollar
syntax
symbol.
error. Correct. The variable which we're discussing, right, with the parentheses, without parentheses, with the parentheses, yeah, that is for using that which we are discussing. This is not the correct one. Variable syntax error.
Okay, so are we going to get the syntax error? Okay, that is one answer. So what about others?
Same, sir. Ing is included in variable name here while using dollar symbol. That's why it is invalid. If we give space, then it may be valid.
Okay, you are asking that here. If you give the space, that is a valid.
Maybe valid.
Yeah, it's valid, but
It's valid.
when we print output,
Correct.
it will be
You
like
can-
bash space ing. It will not be
Exactly.
one word.
Yes, yes.
Exactly.
Exactly. So what we are expecting is bashing. I need it. I don't want the bash space ing.
Yes, yes.
So I need that concatenate these two. But if I use it like this, what's going to happen? Okay, let me try to run it.
It might be run.
So this is the script which I implemented. And if I try to run this, what's happened? We don't see any syntax errors. Nothing, no errors. But it is saying just, I am on my keyboard.
Keeping the text statement.
It is not accessing variable.
Yeah, so this variable is not available, right? We didn't define this variable. My shelling, do we have any variable here?
No.
So that is empty. So that's why it is saying that here we don't see this any value, it is showing that empty value. But my requirement is, I'm expecting about it, my shell is a variable. And ing is that actual in the echo print option. That is ing, bashing, I need it. So here if I use it the dollar, what it is going to understand is, so this entire word it is going to consider as a variable, but this variable is not yet defined. If we don't define any variable, but you are trying to reading that, it is going to have the empty value. But I have this my shell variable. To that my shell, that is a bash we are expecting here. Bashing I need it. Then those cases, what is the second type of this reading the variable?
Dollar symbol, curly braces.
Yes, use the So the bind this variable with curly braces. So then now it is going to understand, okay, the my shell is a variable that is going to reading that. And after getting the value, that is ing, whatever we have, that ing is going to appending to that bash. Now let me try to run this. Yes, I am bashing on my keyboard. Yeah, bash we are reading from another variable, and ing we are appending to that variable during that output. But normally with the dollar it is not possible, right? In this case. So that's point of view dollar. You can use it with a double curly braces, the binding that variable. So we have the total two notations. One is directly the dollar variable name. Yes. So if you'd like to use it the directly, yes, you can use it. But in all the cases directly that is not possible, especially in this example. Then you can use it this notation. Is it clear about that? How do we read the variable? The formats, two formats are available. One is dollar and second one is dollar. Within the curly braces, we can define the variable. Are you clear about this one?
Sir. Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, yes, please.
If we, while calling without curly braces, the dollar my shell ing, why it is returning output as a space, sir? That output should be variable not defined, or
Exactly.
we are not.
Good.
Why it is?
In the programming wise, other than the shell, if you are going to use the Python or Java or any C programming, if you don't define the variable and if you are trying to read the variable, that means the variable is not defined and you are trying to read the variable, it throws exception, that variable not found
Yes.
or not defined. But shell beauty what we have is, so shell is not throwing any error. If the variable is not defined also, if you are going to read that variable which is not defined, it is going to assign the empty string. So that is
if we
inbuilt.
use if we use without the string, means only echo dollar my shelling, then it returns the space as output.
Yes, empty var as simple as this.
Okay.
Suppose as you are talking about it here with echo, without the string notation, if I use it, so I'm just trying to read that undefined variable. Undefined variable. This is undefined variable. Shelling.
Yes.
So that is going to have that empty var. Default shell is going to assign the empty var.
Okay.
That is the beauty in the shell. But remaining in the any other programming, Python or Java or the C, you are going to use it. The variable should be defined. Otherwise, you are going to reading. That is some compilation errors you will be having. Interpreter doesn't accept it. But shell interpreter beauty is, even the variable is not defined, but you are trying to reading it. Okay, so it is the variable is not defined. It is giving them the empty value, but it doesn't throw the variable not defined or variable not found. That's kind of the exception. Good. Is it clear about that on the variable section? Yeah, so if you use it like this here, so it is, I am on my keyboard. Yeah, so this is about some variables representation and variables usage. And variables, whenever you are defining that, yes, what are the standards we need to follow that? It should be allowed alphabets or a numeric underscore, but numeric even it allowed, but you should not use it as a starting character. and no special character should be used in the variables. Only these three, either alphabets or numeric and underscore. And accent values, either you can use the dollar and dollar within the curly braces, the variable name. There are the two notations which are available. But what about this read-only variables and other variable types? That will continue tomorrow. So I will share those exercises, whatever I'm showing that, yes, which you can try to refer it and practice it. Yeah, so any other queries, questions, please let me know before going to end up today. Is it clear understanding the points?
Yeah, we are good for today.
Yes, sir. We are good as of now.
Okay, good. Yeah, main points, remember that shebang is very, very important. That is a type of the shell to define it. And then comment lines, how do we use it? Hash. And then how the shell is going to execute it, sequence of the commands. Yeah, that's one section. And then we started the variables. Variable should be defined with variable name equals and a value which you are going to assign that. Value that could be text. If it is the text, we use the double quotation. Or if it is the numeric values, directly you can define it. Or yeah, the devices you can define, files you can define. We'll come back some other examples with the data types. But you don't need to use it explicitly, the data types. So like in the C program, we have that int data type, date data type, string data type, like that. Here you don't need to struggle with that data types. Here you don't need to struggle with that, like yeah, the variable which is not defined, you are calling that. Yes, that is empty, it is written there, but it is not throwing that any error. Yeah, those are all some like the scripting level advantages. Yeah, variable, the names formats and invalid variable names and invalid variable names. That is one point. And once the variable is defined, how do we read the variable? Yes, you can use it the two approaches. One is dollar variable name, directly you can use it. But if you have some appending and within the string, sometimes directly if you use the dollar, it doesn't work it. Then you can use the dollar double curly braces. Yeah, so tomorrow we'll continue with the read-only variables and some special variables we have. So that's we'll come back to that. Yeah, thank you. That's all from my side, but we'll meet tomorrow.
Sir,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. Could you please share the GitLab which we discussed, the GitLab link?
Yeah, I'll share it in the WhatsApp.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, that is in the private GitLab, but
Yeah.
instead of giving that all that permissions, and I will move into the public and I will share it. That's not an issue. But
Okay,
give me
sir.
some
Thank you.
time. So by afternoon, I will share it.
Definitely. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
No problem.